229. And then if you look at the performance of the economy, look at other social indicators like the inflation rate, the out-of-school children, look at also the number of the unemployed, and even the performance of the economy in terms of comparison with countries that became independent at about the same time with Nigeria. The crisis in Nigeria is multidimensional. There is political component, economic component, social component, as well as environmental component. So Nigeria is in a midst of multidimensional crisis. And it is not only affecting the lives, the quality of lives of the people, it is also affecting the future sustainability of the country as a nation. Because once a nation state cannot take care of the lives and property of its own people, when the vast majority are suffering, their loyalty to the nation become compromised. That's why you now see people falling back to order, seeking alternatives from the current arrangement. So the trajectory is that Nigeria is blessed with resources, but the quantum of resources, it is not reflected in the human development indicators of the people of Nigeria. So this is my own take that, yes, we can't deny we are living in crisis. And if you ask me who is responsible, I will tell you that the political elite are largely responsible because they ask for this power. When they are given, they fail to listen to the people. The fact that I am Mr. Governor, Mr. Local Government Chairman, Mr. President, Mr. Minister, Mr. Whatsoever, I need to be responsive to the yearnings and aspirations of the people.
Oh, we can come right away.
There are a lot of expertise outside government. A lot of people have value to add, but the people in power are most of the time arrogant, and they become romantically attached to their opinions and value propositions, and they don't listen to anybody. So this is very dangerous. The political elite, like the current mess, as I said the other day, the new government in power touch about two critical elements at the same time: the devaluation of the currency in an import-dependent economy, monocultural economy, as well as the subsidy on petrol. Now they are trying to say they are going to escalate the value-added tax from 7.5 to what? To 10%. So nobody said we don't need reform, but that reform needs to be managed systematically. We don't need to put so many logs in the fire. We can take one element, fix it, review the analysis, the outcome, the impact, and the result. If we are okay, we move on. If it is not okay, we fine-tune it. How can you be putting like 10 pots on the fire at the same time without minding the impact on the people? This is my little take about the crisis in Nigeria now. But I'm happy the speaker has written extensively about it, and I believe he's going to do justice to the subject matter of our discussion this evening.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I'm glad for those thoughts that you offered, and I'm happy to be here also today. Mr. Onojo, thank you that you are here. Thank you for taking the time out. Sorry about the technical hitch and all that. Mr. Sanusi spoke before you while we were waiting for you, and he gave us his own synopsis and ideas of the crisis in Nigeria and things like that. It would be nice to have your take and your opinion of the situation of things in Nigeria, and perhaps how we got to where we are, and then, of course, how you think we can get out. So is there really a crisis in Nigeria, in your own opinion? And if there is, why? If there is not, what is the situation of things in our dear Nigeria?
Okay, I hope my voice will radiate enough for everybody to get a gist of what I'm saying. Because unlike my senior brother, Mekudi Sanusi, I'm not romantically attached to any, to any fixed ideas. And I rely a lot on history to push my argument. I have no disagreement that the country is totally in a state of fragmentation, which means nothing is connected to each other. A lot of things are happening, but they don't have a center of gravity that puts them together to make sense in terms of a society, because a society at the level of the nation state is supposed to be held together by the state. That's what the philosophers told us, that the state exists so that the society will not be, life will not be short, brutal, and nasty. Now we are in a state of nastiness that we have not seen. So absolutely, I don't think anybody will deny that there is a crisis. And as long as there is a crisis, then the question will always be, where is it coming from? Just like the narrator said. And that's the question I want to address myself to, in a historical sense, not in an empirical sense, although I'm not going to divulge the two of them. In other words, I move with the thesis, the hypothesis that we are in a crisis because we have injured the story, the narrative. We have injured the reality of how societies move, how societies transform. All societies that have not achieved industrial transformation are supposed to worry about how to get it. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, that is not part of the terms of reference. What we are told is that we need to do reform. In other words, the assumption is that we're already there. And what we need to do is to retouch the system and how we manage it on a day-to-day basis. But that's the lie, because historically, Nigeria has not achieved the transformation that we are supposed to achieve. In other words, every nation state in the current configuration of the world is supposed to move from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. Industrialization in itself does not solve every problem, but it creates the situation for the possibility of solving them. For instance, Borno State is underwater now, and many other states in Nigeria have experienced that. We don't have the technical capacity to manage these things, because the first strike should have been that there ought to be a set of people who anticipated that a dam could burst or that rainfall could go beyond the threshold. Obviously, that did not happen. So in other words, the main source of the crisis is that we have injured the process of, we have deferred from the track of historical transformation. We have not addressed the question of historical transformation from agrarian to industrial economy. We are rather talking about reforming as if we are already there. That will bring the question of, why do I say so, or how is that achieved? Well, if we follow the trajectory of the West, industrialization is what makes them different. And now we have industrialization on a scale that has not been seen in history before, the one that has occurred in China. So the debate about the trajectory of society moving from agrarian to, it's a settled debate. It's not a question of whether we like it or not. Well, India is experimenting on a slightly different trajectory, in the sense that technology rather than industrialization is what they are aiming at. But industrialization is not a disused concept in India, in India's economic process. Well, we shall see whether technology can be put at the center of social transformation. technology and service sector economy. At the moment, we don't have that evidence. So what is required to achieve this kind of transformation? If you look at history, you will see that one key variable is very important, and that is the variability of force, the use of political violence. Without it, you cannot achieve it in one form or the other. Look at the Western world. They had to go colonial. They had to capture people, make their construct markets, invade economies and societies and cultures, take people captive, enslave people for labor, for resources, for market. That's how they achieved industrialization. Look at China, they are the second example. 7 people ruled China. It's a country of a civilization of 1.4 billion human beings. Just 7 persons. That's force. That's use of force. But I don't mean force in a crude, purposeless sense. I mean force in a directed manner that, look, we want to get to this from where we are to where we are looking at, and the only way to get there is to discipline labor. While the West disciplined labor that is outside the West, by going to Africa, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and Asia, China is disciplining internal labor, subordinating the entire citizenry to a control system aimed at that eventually made them the manufacturing workshop of the world. And now they have built a civilization that has no peer in human history. My contention is that Nigeria has not been following this, and that's why it is in crisis. That's why it's incapable of solving most of the challenges that confront humanity at this point. And those challenges are now widened to the kind of crisis we are talking about. So what is my evidence for this contention? I take one crucial evidence from Lee Kuan Yew, the only other city-state that has achieved social transformation on a scale unimaginable. How many people are there in Singapore? Lee Kuan Yew argues that the process of transition from agrarian to industrial economy or to commercial economy is such a tedious process, such an involving process that society must use force. Of course, he was a dictator, but he was an informed dictator. He was not a crude dictator. If you look at his selection of human resources for managing the transition economy, you will understand what I'm saying. If you look at he himself, a double major from Cambridge, he prepared for leadership. So he was a dictator, but he was not a purposeless dictator. And so he supervised the transition process in Singapore. And his argument is that that process is so complicated that the use of agricultural raw materials to produce an industrial transformation is so complicated that you must use force. But he argues also that after that moment, you have to relax it. And it can be argued that that is the lesson that China has learned, because Soviet Union did not follow that trajectory. Soviet Union relied on force beyond where it was necessary, and it collapsed. Because Lee Kuan Yew is saying that the engineers, the doctors, the accountants, the financial experts that you used to supervise the turning of agrarian materials into industrial goods have become the kind of human beings that you can no longer use force. You have to open the system so that they too can participate. They too can be crucial variables in decision making. Who gets what? Soviet Union did not do that. It remained at the level of the party, general secretary of the party, the control system. You cannot import this and that. Now in China, you can import cigarettes, but the tax you pay on cigarettes will be such that you will not even want to import it. You can import any type of cars, Mercedes, whatever, but the tax system will be such that you will not even, your mind will not go into that. So the society is closed, but it is open, but it is closed. That means there is a force there that is compelling people to behave in a particular manner. Nigeria has not had that. And that's why today the country has no center of gravity. You could say that Saudi Arabia, for instance, is not a democracy, but it has a center of gravity. The royal family may not be correct all the time, but they are feared. And so they control the system in a manner that they have an end game. In Nigeria, there is no end game. In the name of a plastic form of democracy, everybody can do whatever he wants, including the right to kill and to go unpunished. So there's a security dimension to our crisis. You can take government money and put in your account, and tomorrow you become the hero for it. You can injure the law system. You can misinterpret the law willfully to serve your cause, and there is no punishment for it. These are the crises. These are the manifestations of the crisis we are talking about. So we have not taken that. We have not taken note of that, and we have a problem now. And that's a question of we haven't approached the issue of transformation from what we have to what we don't have. And we are not a factor in the world now because we don't have that. We embrace, of course, structural adjustment is a narrative of the powerful. But Nigeria was co-opted into it, and Nigerian leaders embraced it because the military authority that came in 1986, 85, needed to survive. To survive, it had to rely on external forces for its support because those forces have the capability to do away with any regime in the third world. It's much more complicated now, but at that time, it was basically more or less a unipolar world. And so they toed into that. And what did that regime do? That regime did two things, shortchanging the transition process. The transition process was on the card. If you look at the Second National Development Plan and look at the language used there, the Second National Development Plan says the national economy must be planned because you cannot control what you don't plan. That is the language of people, the super permanent secretaries, who were well educated, who could have repeated what Lee Kuan Yew was doing in Singapore because they went to the same schools. Monguno went to Edinburgh. Alison Aida went to Oxford. What is the other guy from the same Delta state in those days? Who was Philip Asiodu, Damchida, all of them, Edwin Obu, they were all well educated. They were all nationalists and they were informed. And each time you want to understand that set of people, whom we later nicknamed as Super Permanent Secretary, you read the Second National Development Plan. It was their plan. And they functioned in the civil service in the same way that the British system functions up till today. The Permanent Secretary can question a minister in terms of expenditure. And we had all of that until the Murtala Obasanjo regime felt that the Super Permanent Secretary had become too powerful for the Nigerian state. And they started the 1975 purge. And the civil service, which is the only instrument to control the elite, lost out in the power game. And after that, the military governor, the military commissioner at the federal level, and the military head of state became the ruling force. Even then, they were still committed to transformation from agrarian to industrial economy. You could see that in that regime, you saw mega projects built all over the country. Number one, these projects provide services, petroleum, mining, automated vehicle companies in Anambra, Bauchi, here and there, and so on and so forth. But they served a larger purpose. They made the country indivisible because you have pipes laid all over the country. So in other words, Nigeria was on course. Nigeria accepted what I'm saying, that an economy like this has to move from a rural agrarian to an industrial economy. Those permanent secretaries understood what they were doing. And then something happened in the middle of the game. Please, if I'm overshooting my time, could you please remind me? And if I'm not being heard, or if I'm talking above people's head, please guide me. I would say that unless I'm interrupted, I'm correct to say that that set of Nigerians knew what they were doing. But in 1985 afterwards, Second National Development Plan was disbanded. The planning mechanism completely was also disbanded. The second revolution that was going on in terms of transition was the student movement. Many of you may not accept, but if you read the Nance Charter of Demand, it was a student replica of the Second National Development Plan. The key issues were all addressed in those documents. What happened? The Second National Development Plan was disbanded, the planning mechanism was disbanded entirely, and we come to short term or whatever they call it. And secondly, the campuses were disorganized as a center of production of consciousness. The courses that were being taught were rewritten by the IMF. The kind of intellectual that that propelled the kind of consciousness that were behind the student movement were dismissed or sent packing. Some were deported. And that's where we are today. Because the fundamental crisis, the most crucial of the crisis in Nigeria is that we are not even able to articulate the crisis. We are looking at Tinubu, at one person, at one minister, and so on and so forth. We have to go beyond those individuals because they are individuals of flight. They're here today, gone tomorrow. So by 2004, at the twilight of the Obasanjo regime, we are completely dismantled this country because the paradox there has to be taken seriously. Obasanjo, who presided over the Second National Development Plan at the level of implementation as Commissioner for Works under Gowon, and then later as head of state, was the one who also presided over the liquidation of the same set of companies that were set. He came to sell the major companies during his own privatization, much, much higher than IBB did. But the point is that from 1985 to date, no Nigerian leader disagreed with the narrative of reform, which means they have completely abandoned the notion of transformation of Nigeria from agrarian to industrial economy. They have completely dismissed that. They have gone for reform, and reform suggests that the economy is already built, whereas there is no economy. So that is the origin of the deindustrialization that we have witnessed. The minimum industrial settings that we had have all disappeared. In Kano, in Ikeja, in the east, in the south, all of them are. What we are doing now is the oil economy, which is itself an enclave economy. Enclave economy which does not reproduce itself. Yes, you get foreign exchange component for your economy, but that is not productive. That is speculation economy. And so the country now operates on a windfall-minded economy. If your friend becomes a minister, your classmate, you can leave your house with 10 naira in your pocket and come back as a millionaire. That's what we call windfall-minded economy. You get rewards for nothing. And that is typical of the oil economy because it operates on speculation. It's an enclave economy. It applies only to those who have the capabilities, either as in terms of the quality of their training or the area of expertise to benefit from the economy. So it's restricted to a very small percentage of this thing. So the agrarian sector was completely dismissed. So what we're dealing with are the manifestations of the crisis. And the question is, where are we heading? Of course, the simple answer is that we're heading for crisis. But my argument in this regard is that crisis is not necessarily negative or bad. It could be provocative of something positive. It could be provocative of something negative. If, for instance, Nigeria, if somebody in government is smart enough to provoke a genocide, which is very easy because we have been profiling ourselves. And Nigerians are very good in profiling each other. The Igbos are this, the Fulani are that.
Thank you so much for that analysis and background and history and everything. Okay, so having said all that now, what do you think we should do and what is the way forward? How can we get out of this crisis? Is it possible? How much of the crisis would you attribute to the present government? And what can they do, or what can we as citizens do to sort ourselves out?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. What should we do? Well, the first thing we should do is what we are doing now, which is we are clarifying among ourselves. What is not clear, what is clear, we are discussing among ourselves. From this discussion, a certain understanding of the issue will become consensual, will become agreed to to the kind of people who are participants at this forum. And it could go on and on and on and circulate. Other people are doing their own discussions at various levels. Now, the totality of the consensus that are built from all these discussions can propel a solution. Why can it do that? It can do that because reality is a product of narratives, the narrative that you and I believe. And once the narrative is binding on the critical mass, there is no government that can do otherwise. So that's why what we are doing now is important. And that is primary. In other words, you have to put the civil society at a level of equal conceptual and philosophical level with the government. There is the political society, there is the civil society. The civil society makes hegemony possible because they can discuss and reason and arrive at basic understanding of what is required. So that's my first thing. So what is happening here is the first step towards a way out. The second step is how to organize. Because the fact that you and I accept that this is right, this is wrong, does not automatically make our position practical. The only thing that can make it practical is if we pose our questions and make it acceptable, persuasive to the larger community, national community. Once we do that, it becomes a frame of reference for action so that somebody in Sokoto, somebody in Port Harcourt, in Enugu, in Calabar, in Mubi will be speaking the same language on what is wrong with Nigeria and how to go. Once you achieve that, you have solved the problem. It is not the political society, that's the government, is a very weak formation. People are talking about Tinubu is going to be a dictator and so on. He cannot be a dictator because there are 4 major forms of power and he has just one, which is the coercive instrument. And even that is fluid. So to that extent, he cannot impose dictatorship. The person who can impose dictatorship better is IBB because he comes to you in a harmless manner and he poses his question in a way that looks convincing. That kind of person can harm you without you knowing. But Tinubu will charge people to court for protesting, which is unconstitutional because the Constitution has specified in very clear terms that people have the right to protest, to come together, to have conscience, to specify their religious belief. So it's not dictatorship or the coercive power of government that will solve any problem. They cannot impose their will with that coercive power alone. It has limitation because the coercive authority is not even homogeneous. Within them, you find all manner of classes and levels of consciousness. So civil society, in other words, my second thing is about trying to push your own consensus, the consensus in the civil society, from binding to actual action. What sort of action? Well, if society comes to a certain critical level, there could be what we call the war of attrition. Sorry, the war of position. The war of position is You are right. No, I am right. Political society versus civil society. That has taken a lot of time in Nigeria. Now, one could say that the situation is set for moving from the war of position to war of attrition. The war of attrition is the level at which government and people engage each other. We have had one just about 3 weeks ago or so. We are still dealing with the consequences of that. And nobody can say what next will happen. And maybe the next will be much more organized, better coordinated. And it's not a question of it's not a question anybody can escape from it, because the civil society has to act. It is the civil society that says, that approves or disapproves a policy. It is not the government. The government is just a servant of the people, and it has to be made to be, because even if you put a bishop in power in Nigeria today, you are still going to fight. So this civil society reorganization, re-strengthening in Nigeria is very, very important. And those of you who are connected to the churches, to the new universities, to the new civil society organizations, have the power to bring about a national consensus. Once there is a national consensus, any power other outside civil society is a gun power. Look at what happened to communism. Communism was fortified with terrible spies, with powerful militaries, powerful general secretary. What happened? When they asked the soldiers to shoot in August 1998, the coup in Soviet Union, they refused to shoot. That's how Boris Yeltsin climbed the tank that was supposed to go and kill him and became a global hero. And people were calling him. What is happening in Russia? What's happening in Russia? He was supposed to have been shot by the troops. They refused. So consensus is very important. The other name for it is hegemony. The government in Nigeria is very crude. Before they come and say, I'm not arguing for anything. This is what happens throughout history. Once there is a consensus in the civil society, the political society is in trouble. I don't know if I should continue or wait for another question.
All right, fine. Thank you very much. At this age and stage, and so on and so forth, what do you think of our political process in Nigeria? And do you think it's a process that can actually bring about leadership that can help us with this crisis?
I don't, Nigeria is a huge country, very huge and very complex. Who would have thought that a discussion session like this is going on Zoom? To that extent, I will not say we don't have leadership materials. The problem, however, is that some of the leadership materials are not known. People don't know them. Even if they come out, our prejudices are well built and they are well codified historical prejudices. We may not even embrace them. 3, we have a problem in Nigeria. We are always looking for the good guy, the guy who did not steal his mother's meat from his mother's soup, the guy who did not commit sin. We have no business with a good man. Once you have a civil society that understands what the society should have, you don't need to bother who is in power. You only need to bother what program is on the ground. And it is the job of the civil society to frame the program that they want to be implemented. Any government at all, the nature of the state is such that it is only capable of evil. Every philosopher has agreed to that. The state is a machine for control. So if you put a bishop there or an imam, you are still going to have problems, because by its very nature, the state has a logic. And that logic is not respecter of good people or bad people. In fact, it constructs individuals in power. Look at Evo Morales in that Latin American country. I mean, who would have thought that this is a labor guy? Who would have thought that he would remain, he would do some of the things he did? So we don't need good guys and bad guys. We need to have a program and say, look, who will implement this program the way we want? The fourth factor is that we don't have leadership recruitment in Nigeria. We don't have universities that train people whom you could say, well, he went to Ciso University, he will not misbehave. We don't have that. Look at Ibadan, 70-something years old university. It's still running undergraduate programs. It does not produce leaders. Well, maybe our level of development is such that you could say, you cannot say Ibadan or the first generation university should only concentrate on producing high quality manpower. May not make sense to say that. But you can trim it and give it an assignment. These are national institutions. Their job is to, 36 of the prime ministers in Britain went to Oxford. Well, Oxford does not insulate you from being an evil person, but it gives you certain tips about reality that people could say, well, he went to Oxford. Or he has classmates who will call him and say, my friend, what the hell are you doing? This is not our tradition. We don't have that in Nigeria. So you can't have pastors and, I'm sorry, I'm not attacking pastors. I have pastor friends. You can't give the job to just anybody. You must groom people, because to go to manage other human beings, you must imbibe certain qualities. You must have that level of discipline to imagine the implication of your policy for somebody who does not even know how to write a petition. You can't get that just by being a good man. You have to get that through technical grooming. We don't have that. Where is the single institution that produces leaders in Nigeria? Look at NIPS. Look at the thesis they are producing there now in the last 10 years. Can you make any of them president of Nigeria and sleep in your room without worrying what the government does? This is the issue.
Yeah, those are the issues. But what I'm asking you for, sir, are practical steps that we can take at this moment from where we are to get these things corrected in Nigeria. You know, one of the biggest challenges I have is that a lot of the time I get people who say, we should do this, we should do that, we should do that, we should do that. We all know what we should do. My challenge is that, why are people not doing it? You know, and if people are not doing it, what can we do to get them to do it, or to get the people who will do it? Another thing is that Nigeria was formed or negotiated on a regional basis. Our founding fathers sat round a table at the various constitutional conferences all over the place, and they agreed that there will be a Western region, a Midwest region, an Eastern region, a Northern region, because of the peculiarities of the characteristics of the different kinds of people, and because of their requirement for semi-independence and autonomy to drive their economy and political faith. The army came and destroyed that structure. And we Nigerians have kept quiet, we have accepted it, and we're offending ourselves in a structure that we did not negotiate or agree. Even 25 years after the barrel of the gun has gone, and still Nigerians are afraid, and I don't know who is afraid to go back to the discussion and the original terms on which we were negotiated. The third thing that is going on that I don't know and is obvious or not obvious to a lot of people is the still dominance of our persons, our culture, our mode of operation, and our economy by the same colonial masters that colonized us. Whether you like it or not, they still dominate our economy and a lot of our political decisions, because we still go back to them handicapped, asking for advice, asking for help, asking for grants, negotiating loans. These same people, we still go back to them. And I don't know how somebody who was your adversary, who really didn't wish you well, who colonized you, who used you, who abused you, who used your labor, and who used your resources to benefit their own economies, you are still going back to them, and you are thinking I'm sorry about that glitch. And you're
Okay.
thinking that they'll give you sincere, genuine help and advice. I don't get it. You know, this same Babangida that you mentioned, a very good friend of mine, very pleasant and lovely gentleman, is the same person who started this IMF discussion, IMF negotiation, blah, 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 that has now begun to weaken our economy, you know. And the painful thing is that we Nigerians just seem to accept everything and we're not ready to bite the bullet. I don't know if I've asked too many questions of me or spoken too much, but I really want to hear from you, you know, your own opinion about all these things. You may not agree with me, but if you don't, I want practical solution to Nigeria's situation. You know, even if we need to name a few names and say this man needs to do this, that man needs to do this, you, Pastor Itwa, you need to do this or you need to do that. I want something that is implementable if possible. Over to you, sir. And after this, I will get the people to ask their own questions. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Can I take your questions in reverse order? The first one is the second one is you know, Nigeria was negotiated by a set of leaders. The negotiation has been flouted, been implemented in breach. I don't agree with that. Yes, the leaders negotiated. They did within the context of what they understood at that time. Nigeria has moved on from that level. If Nigeria had industrialized, for example, if you go to Aluminium Smelter Company in Akwa Ibom, when it was alive, you see Nigeria at work there. When working people are subjected to the work condition, this ethnicity and primordial tendencies tend to recede because the criteria for allocation and for reward shifts from those from the solidarity, the ethnic solidarity, to other considerations. And that's very important. Look at Soviet Union of old. They could move a whole settlement from one extreme to another just because of climate conditions or whatever. So there are no permanent, these things are very fluid things. And the negotiation they did, yes, we can keep referring to it, and but we can also modify it. So I don't think that's really fundamental. Number two, I have lived in Lagos and worked in Lagos. I have studied in Kano. I have lived in Cross River. I'm from Benue. And when I move around, I don't see that kind of difference that people talk about. If you go to the market, you see a certain pattern that's peculiar to Nigerians across. I don't think that's the main thing. Yes, you can always fine-tune the pattern of federalism to respond to specific challenges as we move from one phase to another. That's not fundamental. So I don't think the question is the problem of Nigeria is a serious sense, that kind of, the point that people keep making, the mistake of 1914, the mistake of 19 whatever, which country in the history of humanity has emerged that was not created by force? There is none. Before capitalism, we didn't have what we call nations today. Capitalism came and reconstituted people into home markets, and that's what you call nation. And as capitalism itself keeps adjusting, nation boundaries and national cultures will keep adjusting. There is nothing fixed about it. What you need are informed leaders who can negotiate terms. What best serves the country at a particular point. If it has become necessary by the current level of understanding that we should have a renegotiated federation, we can fine. But let people not create problems that they will not be around to solve. Because there was a time Nigeria was run on regions, and there came a time that agitation for centralization of power was very prominent, and that's the outcome. Of course, the military imposed a commandist sense of their own reality on the nation. But if Nigeria today had reached a level of industrial capability whereby issue of my child wants to go to federal government college and she cannot get it, and I say, oh, these Fulani people, they have taken these Yoruba people, they are everywhere. If we have gone beyond that level, would you hear anybody talking about Yoruba have taken this, Hausa have taken the Igbos? That will not arise. So the issue about industrial transformation is still
but
key.
the question is, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. The question is, why have we not gone beyond that level? What has prevented us from going beyond that level? What are the practical things? Yakubu Gowon left Nigeria. We had Peugeot manufacturing. We had Volkswagen. We had this. We had that. What happened? Why have we not gone beyond that level? What is the structural problem that's a fundamental problem preventing us from going beyond that level? You have 4 refineries in this country. They have not worked and produced 1 barrel of 1 gallon of oil in 25 years. Yet they are paying staff, they are paying overheads, they are doing turnaround maintenance every year. And Nigerians are sitting down and looking at everybody from government to government. Why is that so? There's something fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, you're right. There's something fundamentally wrong, and I have tried to put my hand on what is fundamentally wrong. You see, when you are looking at what is fundamentally wrong, you don't look at the manifestation, because the manifestations are coming from somewhere, and you have to look for that somewhere. And I've made the argument that we were on course by the document of the Second National Development Plan and by the activists, civil servants who prepared the document, and by the quality of the military at the time that, because you mentioned Gowon, at that time, Gowon could relate very well with the permanent secretaries. Subsequent military decided that the permanent secretary had become too powerful, and they checkmated them. And not only checkmated them, threw away the idea of planning the national economy for national control. And in its place, they put in the reform narrative. And the reform narrative is a paradigm for privatization. And so the companies that you mentioned have now become, have been sold out to people who, when we are told, would bring money, would bring expertise, would bring technology. They brought nothing. They came here, lobbied through your banks, got local money, and bought these things on their own terms and absconded. So the fundamental thing is the reform package that you replaced, that you threw away the National Development Plan approach to development, and you took a reform package which assumed that the economy is already built. And now the reform package has had its effect, and now there is no economy. And without economy, you are now going to boil human beings to eat. That's the situation we are. Because people are going to now look for human beings to eat flesh. In the absence of food, you can't go to farm and produce food. You have no industrial combines to produce the food that will feed a country of this size. So what are you going to do? So that's why you are in crisis. You are pressing me on specifics. I have said what I consider the specifics. I said in every society, the civil society is the engine of development. It is not entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs have a paradigm of profit, and they serve their profit motive. They can behave anyhow as long as their profit motive is satisfied. They can sell anything. They can advertise anything and say, this thing is very good, it will heal you, even when it will not. So the civil society is the anchor. It is the civil society that imposes parameters, that disciplines it. It's a very difficult thing for the civil society, because the civil society is not as powerful in material terms as the political society. Unfortunately, the political society doesn't have hegemony at its control, and it is hegemony that allocates values. So I gave the example that what we are doing here, by developing a framework applicable that can generate a binding narrative, is the starting point. And I don't see any other shortcut to it. Some people I can see people talking about, why are you still talking about IMF? The IMF has never gone away. They even control the kind of courses that your children should study in the universities. When you have, many of you here have children in the universities at home here. if you have one child in the UK and you have one here, when they come on holiday, do they use the same language? They don't. That one there can sell you yourself, and you will not know. The one here can butcher you, but he cannot sell you. So the quality of training is very important. I can see someone protesting that something does not fly. So in other words, there is no magic to it. You cannot go beside the civil society, because what is it that constitutes the social? What is it that constitutes the economy? What defines the political? It's discourse. There is no such thing as fixed reality. Reality is how reality is understood. Reality is what we make of it. And who makes the construction? It's the civil society, the media, labor, academics, the theories we talk about, the concepts we deploy. It is the concept that, I mean, the recent protesters had just this hashtag. It's the hashtag that determined all else that happened. The hashtag says, profile the government as an engine of bad governance. And that's what propelled people to the streets, because it summarizes their suffering and it profiles their enemy, the person they conceive, the authority that they have found as the source of their problems. And that's why you had that. So you can't go beyond the civil society and say, because, okay, you don't want the IMF, but you have somebody who negotiates with them. How do you stop that person? The only way you can stop it is through the civil society. You can't go to IMF headquarters and say, my friend, you are killing Nigeria. Well, let's fight. You can't do that because they are not reachable. Your only power with the IMF is the power to stop the people who go and do the negotiation on the terms that the IMF produces. So when I talk about leaders, quality institutions that produce leadership, that's what I mean. Why is it that since 1999, only a particular type of people are directors of budget, the budget office, the director of SEC, director? You must have gone to a Western university and worked with a certain international organization to get that job. Go and check who has occupied about 5 of those jobs in the financial sector. I'm not talking of ethnicity. I'm talking of their educational and ideological orientation. Go and check. Why does it happen? Is it for nothing? Is it a coincidence? It's not a coincidence. What did Obasanjo say? He said there is a lady at the World Bank. Each time she was coming to Nigeria, it was a problem for him. Because Charles Soludo, who studied in UNN and has a much more third worldist orientation, will not agree with that woman. Ngozi Iweala, who is well-schooled in the IMF team of thinking, would agree. So Obasanjo said he will collect the draft from Ngozi and Soludo and spend the night and rewrite it. Because according to Obasanjo, you may not agree with the IMF, but it's not wise to fight them. Soludo will take off his shirt and say, no, we don't agree. This is wrong. And because he's an authority on economics. Ngozi does not see anything wrong with some of the language that the World Bank, IMF, because it's not because she's against Nigeria, it's because she's schooled, is trained in that orientation. So please, there are no shortcuts or practical things that you must have institutions that produce leaders who have control of the language of power. You must have a civil society that can organize and produce binding narratives. Otherwise, you can go round and round and round and divide the country into provinces, return to 3 federation or whatever, you will still be in the same problem.
We can't hear you, sir.
You can't hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead, please. Then, Sonny, please, you are going to take questions after this.
Okay. Where did you stop hearing me? At what point did you stop hearing me so that I can repeat briefly?
Just backstop a little and then continue. And
well,
then...
I was saying that we don't have any shortcuts. you must have a civil society that can produce a binding narrative and use it as a bargaining chip with the political authority. There is no alternative to that. I said, two, you must have institutions that produce leaders who understand what the nation is all about. And I gave the example of Ngozi Iweala and Charles Soludo. Two of them are all Igbos or have ancestral Igbo history, but their language of power is different. And I gave the example of Obasanjo. He said each time that lady from the World Bank was coming to Nigeria when he was in power, it was a problem for him because Ngozi and Charles would be fighting. So he, as president, will have to redraft the two letters from each of them and make it into one, acceptable to IMF and the World Bank. What does that speak to? It speaks to leaders with language of power that is nationalist and one that is internationalist, that doesn't see anything wrong with what the IMF does. It sees as technical management of the economy, whereas Soludo will see it as political economy issue. These are the issues. We don't have what we have as universities today. I'm sorry to say that, are not universities. Not that the teachers are not good. The environment is destructive, and the government made it so. Deliberately. If you read this former chief of army staff, he said everything, what they did to destroy the universities. What is his name? That brilliant guy from Chris Ali. The book is there.
Okay, thank you very much. You did mention the Borno floods. Before I hand over to Sonny and Jumoke to take the questions, can we just spend a few minutes in prayer for the people of Borno State, that the Lord will fight for them, the Lord will take away this plague, and God will give good governance that will ensure that they can anticipate calamities that will not destroy the people. Also, in some parts of Delta, South, and coastline, there's some floods coming in as well, and people are wading through the waters and being displaced. Let us ask the Lord Almighty to comfort the families, those who have lost possessions, lost people, lost houses and chattels, and ask that God will also enthrone for Nigeria anticipatory governance that can do great things. Also, in some parts of the US, they are running helter-skelter now, boarding up houses, preparing people against a tornado and a storm that they're anticipating. May the Lord Almighty divert the storm and keep them safe in the name of Jesus. Father, we thank you and we glorify your name. Comfort the families. Strengthen us in Nigeria in the name of Jesus Christ. We also pray for the elections coming up in Edo State, in Ondo State, and in some other parts of Nigeria. May those elections be free and fair. May government be responsible. May there be a level playing field. May the voices and the wishes of the citizens, according to democratic practices, be heard. And may all be well with us. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Sonny, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Thank you very much, Mr. Adagbo. Is it Mr. Adagbo or Mr. Onojo? I don't know.
Anyone is okay.
Anyone is okay.
Yes,
all right, fantastic. Like Pastor said, my name is Sonny Enibi. The way we do it here is we'll have a couple of questions for you, and we shall engage. A lot of people are going to come up with...
ask me all the questions.
No, some people may not agree with your position, or some people may want to say one or two other things to the stuff. You know, there are various crises in Nigeria, and the topic today is crisis in Nigeria. Whether we are looking at economic crisis, or we are looking at the food crisis, or we are looking at the security crisis, or the political crisis that is happening in various places. And all these things have their roots and tentacles in different nets. And I think the question that Pastor really, I don't know whether I had the answer, was We are in all these crises all over the place. We are not even looking at statistics because we can see it when we walk on the street, when you interact with people. There is severe crisis in the land. Should we continue like this? How long more do you think the people can hold out? I am taking this call from the village, and they are selling fuel here at 1,250. I see people go to the filling station and buy fuel in half a bottle of Ragolis. You know, I used to see that in Benin Republic in those days when we travel. You know, people selling, hawking fuel in small 500 naira bits. You know, very soon they will be tying fuel in nylon and hawking it on the road. You know, that is what we have been reduced to. So my question really is, how long more do you think we can continue on this trajectory before we snap?
I thought you are putting together all the questions.
No, I just asked a question, then I will open the floor for.
Okay.
Did you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I heard you. I heard you fine. First of all, there is an assumption in your question that we are not fighting. We are already fighting. We are already in fighting mode, and the country is absolutely divided between those who are for the status quo and those who are against the status quo. And that you can read that if you take the newspapers as the barometer for this kind of assertion or claim, you will see that the positions are well defined. There are columnists who are writing, who have taken the battle to the front. And these things are not, they cannot be dismissed because they constitute the discursive condition of emergence for the solution. In other words, solutions do not appear from heaven. Well, that's not on a religion. I'm just using this thing. They don't come from anywhere. They build up, accumulate, and produce outcomes. That's why I was insisting on putting a narrative on the title of this thing. So there is a battle going on. I think what you can talk about is what is going to be the outcome. The president has been so defeated that he has to be looking for a new spokesperson. That's a significant indicator to you that the discursive warfare is not in their favor. And once you lose the discursive warfare, you have lost. That's the point I have made repeatedly. Secondly, that's at the practical level. At the grand level, if you want to remove a problem, you must look at the condition of possibility that produced that problem. In the last, since 1999, even the 1999 election was contested. Every election has been rigged. We have to find an answer to that. If you start producing popular leaders, people who will come back to you and ask you about policy preferences, you will not have the problem we're having now. So we need to look at the condition of possibility for the kind of leadership that does not have any qualms about the price of fuel. Fuel is not about the liquid. It's about every other thing. So a leader that doesn't have any qualms about the thing advertises two things about himself. He's not groomed and he's not knowledgeable about the dynamics of oil. Those are the simple things. And these are being pointed out every now and then. In Tribune alone, you have about 2 columnists who are frontal in this matter. And there are other columnists. Of course, he also has his own columnists. So the battle is already drawn. The battle line is already drawn. The more appropriate question is, what's likely to be the outcome? The second point I made is that there is a condition of possibility that produced the quality of political leadership that doesn't care about fuel prices. We must also address ourselves to that condition of possibility. And I mentioned that the fact that every elections in 1999 have been rigged. Obasanjo's election was rigged. The loser complained and went to court. Jimmy Carter said, yes, the election was wrong, badly conducted, but it was not sufficient to annul the election. That's what he said. What percentage is enough to annul an election? In other words, my thesis is right. And so we have to put a stop to this culture of rigging, because leaders who are product of rigging have no solidarity with the rest of us. I don't know how well that goes with you.
No. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you very much for answering that question. I guess it's a question of opinion and your view, and you're absolutely right in stating how you feel about it. We have two hands up, and we're going to take them. They could make comments or ask questions, either which way you may need to react to it. So we have Umar Yakubu and Oloyinka. So we'll first take Umar Yakubu to go with your question or your comment.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Mine is just a comment. I just wanted to support Mr. Onoja. We can spend 6 hours, in fact, we can spend a day talking about the problems of Nigeria. They are well documented. If you use ChatGPT today, you see all the problems of Nigeria. Now, I understand the philosophy of the African Leadership Group. They like to look out for solutions, what practical, not theoretical. Practical solutions can be adopted to solve all this myriad of problems that we keep whining about, talking about. It's good to talk about them, very important. So my contribution to his paper or to his presentation is, can the African Leadership Group and other relevant bodies simply focus on one thing he mentioned, I think number 4 around somewhere, on our leadership selection process? Because he started with the background of the Lee Kuan Yews, we like to fantasize all of them. Bottom line is all about the leadership selection process. Now, where the agency or the body responsible for the leadership selection process is INEC. Elections have finished in 2023. We have all gone to sleep. Elections will come again. We have not advocated for reforms. We have not pushed for reforms, and when the elections are rigged or whatever happens, manipulated, we'll come here and start shouting. So my solution, my contribution to the solution to the problems of Nigeria, we're making progress. Honestly, we're making progress, but where we could do better is to put all our energy, starting from today, on INEC. What should INEC do? 1, there is nothing magical that they can do electronic voting to a large extent. It might not be 100%, but they should have some element of where they use technology in every process possible. That will reduce manipulation. 2, if they do that, it will reduce the cost of elections, because the problems you are having now is because the cost of elections are so high. When they're so high, when they get to power, all they think about is survival, political survival, and how to recoup their expenditure, quote and unquote. So these are my 2 contributions. To solve, this is just what we need to do, to focus on INEC. And I'm telling you, once you have the right leaders and a platform where they know they can easily be voted out, moreover, they can't even get in if they are not the right leaders, because INEC has done its work. They have curbed the introduction of illicit money into by politicians. It's going to be difficult. It's not as easy as I'm seeing it. But I think that would be a more strategic focus so that all the other things can be solved. Thank you very much. And I think I took more than a minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umar Yakubu. We'll take Oloyinka, and then after this, I think Mr. Onoja may want to react to it. We have Oloyinka, Pastor Funke Awolowo and Professor Grinch. So Oloyinka, go ahead, unmute yourself and
Okay, good evening, everyone. A great perspective, and that's one excellent thing you can get from when quite a number of patriotic people choose to look at Nigeria's issues. I disagree about a number of things, and that's why I wanted to speak up. I disagree with the fact that we think that we do not have the right educational institutions to produce leaders in Nigeria. That's totally wrong, and it's faulty. So I graduated from Lagos State University in 2001. And I know that quite a number of my colleagues are judges, some of them already senior advocates of Nigeria. And you find out that even when Nigerian graduates travel abroad, they do well. We do well. We do well in every area of endeavor. We do well in research. The speaker himself has some Western education. I'm sure that he flourished in his Western education. And so why would we do well outside and then anybody thinks that those same institutions can produce the leaders Nigeria need? I think that's faulty, number one. Number two, I don't think that the fact that they are Ivy League schools or you transform one institution to a supposed Ivy League school would ensure that anybody graduating from that place will become a good leader. That is also faulty. If you look at King's College in Lagos, they have so many people they've graduated who become captains of industries and all of that. But you can also look at their issues, the issues they have, even as an institution and in the private sector. Of course, Sanwo-Olu was also in Harvard before he became governor of Lagos State. All of them rushed to Harvard and rushed to Oxford before coming into political office. What does that matter to them when they come into political office? I think that if we think that Western education or some kind of transformative, radical transformation in education will produce good leaders, I think we discriminate against others. We have traditional institutions and we have quite a number of people who are able to hold their domain, if not yet politicized. Are we saying that people who do not know how to speak English are not educated? And are we saying that they lack the moral rectitude to be able to be humane enough? All we need are human beings who are humane. And I don't think that Western education will deliver that, which is why I shudder to think that IMF is not my problem. As a person in political holder, when I get into office, IMF is not my problem. And you can see that in Burkina Faso. We can send away and detach ourselves totally from all of these Western powers and progress. And that's the reason why BRICS and BRICS and whatever that is called is marching on day by day. South Africa, to a large extent, is holding its own. And the influence of Western powers cannot be said to be the same as anywhere else, yet they are progressing. So I fault that perspective. On looking for solutions, I agree actually with the fact that we need INEC we need to amend the Electoral Act. We need constitutional amendment. And I don't agree that we've gone to sleep. The last speaker says we've gone to sleep. No. Memoranda has been written to the National Assembly about electoral reforms and amendment of the Constitution. What we need to do is to incentivize and then increase efforts towards ensuring that we have at least 2 major amendments before the next election, which is for the Constitution itself and then for the Electoral Act. Do I think that democracy as we practice it is what will rescue Nigeria? Total no. I don't believe it. Even if we do all of our amendments. Again, I've been involved in politics since 2012. And a changed INEC would not help me to get into office. It won't help me in any manner. The cost of elections is not just about organizing elections, but organizing the people. Now we have weaponized poverty, which means before the people listen to me, I must be willing to assuage their sufferings in some manner. I need to go and get quite a number of senior advocates to represent me in court. And I have to pay through my noses. I need to spend money on intra-party politics and be sure that I'm on the right side. So we should reflect, is this the kind of government that will deliver Nigeria? In all, I think that industrial action, I agree with you, but I don't think that the responsibility is for the third sector alone. I think that Nigerians will get to the point where we'll start sitting out and there will be mass protests, not organized process. And then everything may have to scatter before we start to arrange everything again. On the contrary, there are also those who think the government is making tough decisions. And I am a little optimistic that the tough decisions may yet look like they can get us where we are going. That may start to yield fruits from next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your position. Mr. Onoja, I hope you are taking that down. Let me just take the other 2 people so you can group it all together.
Yeah, that's
Is that
fine.
okay? Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Pastor Funke, can you go ahead and unmute yourself? Thank you very much, Olayinka, for your brilliant submission. Go ahead, ma.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for that in-depth analysis. And I'm just touching on the 2 people that he mentioned. and that is Soludo and Ngozi. And I'm thinking, that most of the people we use, especially in the area of economics and in leadership, have been overflowed, in the sense that even when the presidency was about to choose the economic person, the person in charge of the bank, central bank, it was obvious, and it's because there's no diversity. They keep on using the same people, and it just means that we're not spreading our tentacles or even going in depth into the nation to pull out different people. I agree that Mrs. Ngozi was good in certain areas, but because she hadn't lived in Nigeria for a long period, and she was almost edged out at that time. And I just feel that we need to, with all the leaders we have all over the place, excelling, even in the UK, the prime minister, one of the people that they were trending to be prime minister was actually a Nigerian. And we have excelled in most areas, but we're not pulling out the expertise that we need to make this nation flourish. And that's why, that comment that he made, that somebody in Nigerian university and compared to someone in the university abroad, I do not agree. I just sent my son to do his master's, and I never heard that he had any problem. So most of the people we churn out, they're really at par, but we really need to address the discrepancy in this society. There's something that has weakened the economy, the infrastructure, even the leaders that we pull out. And those are the things we need to address. I don't think it really has to do with the persona, so to speak, but it has to do with a systemic rot that is not even pulling out the people who will cause this society to excel. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you done, Funke?
Bro.
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
So I'm not sure what happened to Pastor Sonny. Go ahead, sir, if you could take those questions and then we'll take the next set.
Sorry, it's okay. Go ahead, yeah.
Mr. Onojo, if you could take those three questions.
Oh, okay, okay.
We'll take the next set.
Well, I don't think I need to. That they are pungent observations, and I don't really have fundamental disagreements with them. Mine is just to add caveats. I just want to add 3 caveats. Mala Umar spoke of superintending the electoral process. That's fantastic. But I have always maintained that if you put the most religious person in the villa today, and you don't have a civil society that can put its foot down, you can be rest assured that after 2 years, he will turn a dictator or whatever you did not expect. Because, as I mentioned, the state itself has a logic by which it operates. So I praise the recommendation. It's practical enough, but think also of the logic of the state. It's not only in Nigeria that the state is what it is. That is one. So leadership, yes, trying to influence the selection by making sure that the good guys are elected and all that. No, yes, very good, but keep in mind the civil society being at alert to impose its will on whoever, to set agenda for leadership, not the other way around. Nobody will do that. Very few people have done that. The only one example we have right now is the guy in Brazil. The second point is Oluyinka's many disagreements. First of all, I'll merge his own and Pastor Funke's observation on what is going on in Nigerian universities. I taught for 4 years in the Nigerian university, and I'm a product of the old order when the universities were what we could call the universities. Yes, somebody has observed here that people were rejecting Harvard, and yes, people like Agbaje, they refused to go to Adigo Agbaje, they refused to go outside the country because there was nothing you could not get in Ibadan. But I can tell you that since 1992, we basically don't have universities. If you know what a university is all about. What do we have? Just go to the campuses now. I don't want to pursue that this thing. And I made the point that it's not that the teachers are not good. It's that the environment, what makes a university, has been taken away. There is a pamphlet, I don't know whether I can get it. It's The Universe in the University. It's written by Nii Oshundare. You need to read it if you really wonder what is going on in the university. Please, I don't want to be quoted as saying we don't have university, but that's the truth of the matter. It's not just that our boys, when they go out, they excel. Or you know what they do before they excel? I went to University College London. I'm now in St. Andrews. These are typical Western universities. And I went to Bayero University. Somebody said you went to LASU. Well, okay, so let's leave that at that. Just look at the courses that were taught in those years and the ones that are being taught now. And pick a thesis. Just walk to any department and ask them to give you 3 copies of a recent thesis. And pick another one from 1985, 82, and see what you get. I have children in the university. My son is in the university, hopefully finishing this year. And when I converse with him, and when I meet his group outside, and I used to ask ASU people, are you expecting that these guys will be able to compete with what we are meeting with outside there? It's not just Europe. Look at Seychelles, look at Mauritius, and compare what they teach their students with what we teach in Nigeria. That's just the point. The other main issue is leadership recruitment. If you encounter somebody like Wande Abimbola, the former vice chancellor of Obafemi Awolowo University, you will get what I mean. He's educated in the Western sense, but he's also educated in the traditional sense. That kind of person is a leader because he's capable of asking himself questions. And he will not see you as a challenge to authority if you are asking him questions. That is what a particular logic of training allows you to imbibe. It doesn't come from just anywhere. If you put me in power today and I take certain decisions, I'm likely to reverse myself, not because anybody is going to flog me, but because I have people whom I will think about, who are my classmates. And so let's not overstretch that point. There are certain things you do based on your orientation and based on the people whom you think about while you are doing that. It's very important. I didn't say that people who didn't go to Western schools are not qualified for leadership. I've just given the example of Wande Abimbola. Because if you read what he writes, you will know that it's produced. He can lead at any situation. But there are many people today with PhD professors who will mess up. If you give them power, they will be overwhelmed. They wouldn't know what to do. They don't have an organic link. They don't have a takeoff point. So you can get a PhD and get all the titles and still not be educated. What is the last point? Somebody said, I think it's Oluika again. He said he doesn't care about IMF. It's better you care. It's not at your, yeah, you can look at what happened just recently. The new president of Senegal, have you heard him lately? He came with fire and brimstone against IMF, they called him and said, goodwill people from Africa called him and said, yes, you can dismantle the IMF, but keep quiet about it. See, there is nothing that happens in the world without a power behind it. If you want to take on the IMF, our people say, if you want to avenge what killed your father, you have to stand on the mountain where that thing will not reach you before you start the war. Otherwise, you will be consumed in the war. That's the point about it. IMF is not powerful in itself. There are powers behind it, and they know the weapons they use. So it's not important for you as an African leader to say you don't care. You have to care. All you should tell me is that you have studied their techniques and you have discovered how to beat them in their own game. That's what China did. China is not within the orbit of Western power, not because it's huge, not because it has industrialized, it's because it was, sorry, it was clever enough to anticipate what the IMF was going to be used to do, and it avoided it. That's the clever thing to do about IMF. Don't say they don't matter, they do. I hope I've responded to the ones so far. Well, I don't need to respond to everything. We're having a conversation. We're just stressing some things that are important so that from here, we can become a force to reckon with in the society. Am I lost?
No,
please take the remaining questions, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. We will take the remaining 2 questions. Professor Grange, please go ahead, ma.
Thank you very much, Jumoke. And thank you, Pastor Itua. Mr. Adagbo Oloja, I feel I must speak. First, because you are now in my alma mater, the University of St. Andrews.
Oh, great.
I was enrolled in St. Andrews in 1958.
Wow.
I came out of St. Andrews in 1964. And so I can testify that as old timer, we got the very good training. I also want to remind us that Sir Francis Ibiam was the first Nigerian that went to St. Andrews. So we are now talking history, Sir Francis Ibiam.
Akanu Ibiam?
Yes, Akanu Ibiam.
The close to Pope. The man there in the papacy.
He's passed now.
Okay.
Yes, he's passed. Maybe that may be his son or his nephew or somebody. But yes, Akanu Ibiam was the first Nigerian to attend the University of St. Andrews, and he left a very good legacy. Hence, they were very happy to get more Nigerians into their university.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to belabor the issue that you can be trained in any university in this world now and get good training. It all depends on you and the environment and how you actually want to interact with that environment. So I will agree with those who have said that it's not important, it's not necessary for you to be trained abroad to get good training. But definitely the quality of training is important, and also the power to imbibe the training that you are given is very important. Having said that, my own points of emphasis is this, that yes, you have given us civil society this major role of controlling the governance or controlling government. But the civil society itself appears to be disorganized. So, the first thing, of course, is to find out how we have to organize ourselves to be able to play this role. And I want to add to the power of civil society the need to have the media control. Because right now, the media are, they are under nobody's control, which is good in a sense, in a democracy. But it means that they can be hijacked by government or by anybody who wants to do harm to the nation. So how can we acquire that power to get the media on our side? That's number one. Number two is the leaders that are chosen, as you've said, may come by accidents. But the leaders that have done well have been those that have had the perspicacity to know what to accept from the outside world and what to do with their own resources. You mentioned Obasanjo. I must say that, you know, from what I know of him, because I did work with him for a while, he has that perspicacity, and that is why he succeeded. So finally, you also said that we needed to have the paradigm. Well, what is the paradigm that we need to have? Those who are succeeding have the paradigm of profit. Can you please define for us what kind of paradigm we need to develop to be able to overcome those people who are running helter-skelter with the paradigm of profit? Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. Mr. Femi, please go ahead with your question. We've asked you to unmute.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I hope I can be heard.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, I joined this meeting in the middle. What I just want to say is that it's good for us to talk about many issues and to come up with various ideas. But the only way whereby we can have the problems we have at hand solved is when we practically get involved in leadership. When we practically get involved in leadership. And if we practically get involved in leadership, that means we have to be practically involved in politics. And that is when these problems can actually be truly solved. And it's not just enough for us to be practically involved in politics, because we have very many people that have been involved in politics, doctors, lawyers, name it, and they have messed up many things, problems we have in our universities with the economy. But I think what we need to focus on more so, since this platform aims at bringing leaders together and raising leaders, what I suggest that we should look into more is that we have to drive the need for Nigerians, for us to have capacity for honesty and selflessness. Because what I have seen for quite some time is that we lack honesty and we lack selflessness. And in a situation whereby most of us are dishonest and are selfish, nothing is going to work. Nothing is going to work. No matter what we say, it's not going to work. Even if we are practically involved in anything, if we are empty of selflessness and honesty, everything will fail at the end of the day. It's going to fail at the end of the day. So I think one of the things that I want also actually focus on, and the leadership of this platform to actually lay emphasis on, and to see how we can get this into our system, is to encourage people to be honest and selfless in whatever we do, and at the same time to be practically involved in politics. When we are selfless, we are honest, and we're practically involved in politics, then we can activate the good ideas that we have. But if we just keep talking and we expect those people that lack qualities that are needed in leadership to make the desired changes that we want, then we won't succeed at the end of the day. Thank you very much. This is what I have to say for now.
That will not be a problem. But if
Okay, Jumoke, just go on. Let's Mr. Onoja, I think you can respond to those two, and then we'll begin to take your closing comments as we wrap up. I will call the president for his final word. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I noticed something that's unfair, because I can't be speaking at a platform where somebody who preceded me to St. Andrews by many, many years is also in attendance. That's a reversal of the conversation. But I'm so glad to hear from Professor Nike Grein. I think I will. Yeah, you made a vital point, Prof, that the civil society itself is disorganized. Yeah, everywhere the civil society is disorganized because it is itself not a homogeneous thing. I think what binds the civil society is the fact that they are vulnerable to political society. And because they are vulnerable, they are able to come together and produce a paradigm of struggle. Secondly, they also find it inevitable to organize because it is the theater of the political society. The political society comes into the civil society to sediment the kind of idea they have and the practices they favor. So if the civil society, that makes the civil society indispensable on all counts. But I recognize the diversity of the civil society and the reality of one of its major weapons, which is the media, being a heterogeneous arena. But the civil society's power is the power of meaning, the management of meaning, and that's unique to it. And that's why it prevails. It's the form of power that's overarching when you consider the other three forms of power: institutional power, structural power, coercive power, and then discursive power. Civil society has the monopoly of discursive power, because it is the theater which other actors, other contenders come to negotiate terms, to sell their own programs. So that advantage should not be underestimated. For instance, what we are doing here, you have pastors, you have academics, you have probably you have activists, you have traders, so it's a small online conversation, but it has wider implications. And it cannot be underestimated. So the civil society, there is no alternative to the civil, as long as you have what we call the state. The state is an instrument of rule. It's an instrument for control. And if there is no force standing in the society to set limits to what the state will do, you have a terrible situation. That's the point about the civil society. That's why it is the power to seize, that we who controls the civil society also controls the rest of it. Now, the key question there is, what paradigm? You see, the civil society cannot have a paradigm because it's a very fluid and heterogeneous space. That's why I started by mentioning the imperative of this kind of conversation, so that at the end of the day, it is possible to coalesce these conversations, different tendencies and different paradigms, into one big conversation. In the language of Gramsci, it's called the collective will, the paradigm that then summarizes and superimposes the overarching sentiment of the civil society. It is not a stable one. It keeps changing, but at every point in time, you have one that is overarching, that unites everybody. It's very difficult to unite everybody because somebody in Niger Delta may not understand what is going on in Borno because it's not a direct victim. Somebody in Sokoto may not know what the people in Niger Delta are talking about. So to build such a coalition, you need active workers to explain things, to break barriers, to say that, look, what is going on in Borno is not so different from what is going on in Niger Delta, but these are the differentials, so that people can understand, because people look at the world from the experience they have, from what disturbs them. You don't expect them to go and share the problems of other people. There is empathy, but empathy is a mobile category. So that is the job that activists of civil society do. So they don't necessarily produce a static paradigm. They produce very fluid paradigm that can unite them at a particular point. They jump that point and they move on. 4 or 5 years ago, it was End SARS. It united a large plank of the civil society. Now it is end bad governance. Who knows what will come next week? So that's how the civil society operates. So it has paradigms, but they are not static paradigms. Femi Shola spoke about political involvement. Fantastic. But if you don't create the environment in which that participation makes sense, then you get stuck again. For instance, will you be willing to pay 50 million to buy application form for APC or PDP governorship? So from fixing that amount, they have already excluded you. So the participation is not so much that who will vote for me in my village right now? They don't even know me. The language I use is not their language. Their day-to-day problem, but I am somebody who can do better for that community. Not because they will flog me or do, because on my own terms, I said a community like this has to have stable water supply, because if you provide that quality of water, you reduce half of the budget they spend on health. So I'll do it without anybody telling me. But that's not how they will see it. They'll see that somebody who just came from England and wants to become local government chairman. So explaining and conscientizing is very vital, and only the civil society activists can do it. Politicians do it on a very limited scale because they want to do it to get to the office. And once they get to the office, they acquire a new autonomy. So yes, great to participate in politics, but these people who are there, who have taken over the political space, they are conscious of the fact that they are there on a very selfish agenda, and they have put in practices to control who enters and who doesn't enter. To enter, you must have served them loyally and they can trust you. To enter, you have to have the money to pay. To enter, you have to have a godfather who will sponsor you, who will give an attestation. So don't overlook those things. They are not there for the fun of it. There are control mechanisms put in place by the landlords, people who have made themselves landlords. Some of us cannot win election, not because we are not good, but because by the criteria of recruitment, we are excluded automatically. Ab initio, we cannot contest. We just make a mess of ourselves. So I think that's the limited this thing. I like the questions because they show the diversity of the online community here. And it's very good because it's from diversity that you begin to scrutinize and produce something that unifies, unites everybody, that brings everybody to the same page on a particular issue. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great. I hand over to Jumoke to take some announcements and some house cleaning exercise. And if Pastor Itua is there, he will be around. Pastor, maybe he will be around. Jumoke, after you, maybe Pastor will come and close the session. Thank you very much, sir, for
thanks a lot.
Enriching us with your presence and adding to the discourse. God bless you.
Thank you.
Jumoke, over to you.
Thank you very much. And before I take the announcements, thank you, sir. I just want to, one of the key takeaways for me here is you talked about the role of the civil society. And we mention this all the time on this platform. We can't keep looking to only a class of leaders to make the change. We all have to lead within our own sphere of influence. So whether it's in your community, especially in the home, where the moral values are first taught. That is so critical for us to begin. Most of those that grew up in the 60s and the 70s had those training from the home. And that's what we keep impressing upon us as citizens, that we need to look at our family units, we need to look at our community, whether it's our religious community, whether it's our traditional community. We need to lead with values, moral and ethical values from that point. And that's the only way we can maybe challenge the status quo of this political capture, state capture that we have. But if we keep pointing fingers at only one class of people, I don't know that we can really effect the changes that we are looking for. So thank you, sir, for your contribution. I did put some links in the chat room, and I'm going to go ahead and do it again. This is a way for you to get involved with Africa Leadership Group. Just click on that link, register. And also, this is part of us serving as leaders by sharing this information session. We have to be informed to be able to make the changes that we need. So please share the information about this platform with your network. We meet every Thursday, same time, same Zoom link, just different topics. And also we have a School of Leadership and Good Governance that we here at Africa Leadership Group. So fill that form and then we'll get in touch with you on how you can be more involved with the Africa Leadership Group. Again, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you, and we look forward to engaging you on other initiatives that we work on. Over to you, Mr. President. Okay, if
we can just run
okay,
I'm not sure
so we can go. Yeah, I think Pastor Sonny and he's thanked everyone. Thank you all again for joining us again this evening. It was a good 2 hours well spent, and we hope that you can take some of the information from here and begin to make changes. We can't be siloed. We have to do this collaboratively as a civil society community, not even just organization. So thank you for your time. See you again next week. Same time, same Zoom link, just a different topic.
Thank you so much.
Very much, Mr. Onoja. We
Thanks a lot.
appreciate
I'm very grateful.
insights. Yeah.
All right.
Stay blessed, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good evening, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And God bless Nigeria.
Thank you. Atlanta, California. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning from my end.
Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Okay. Pastor, you're there.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you for being on the platform.
Thank you, everybody. Well done.
Dr.
Thank you,
Onoja, thank you
Pastor.
very much.